Mr. Bhowmik Shah, who is co-founder and CTO at CyberNX. Giving a brief introduction, Bhowmik specializes in cloud and network security, security operations, cloud architecture, penetration testing, web app security, etc. He has extensive experience in conceptualizing, developing, and implementing cybersecurity for fintechs, BFSI, e-commerce, and other domains across, and has been driving large security projects in his various stints across Australia and India. He brings vast and in-depth security expertise from his national and international experience before starting CyberNX. With this, please welcome him with a huge round of applause.
Hello. I hope everybody can hear me. Great, thank you. I'm just going to hide behind the podium. I want everybody, I've got shortened time, so I want everybody to focus on the content. So I'm just going to start from here. I'm going to talk about security monitoring and threat hunting today. So I've got a very fancy title. Every log has a story to tell. I do believe that. We just have to make sure that our teams are listening to what story they have to tell, and we act upon it in the right manner. So let me start off with what I generally tend to call as a series of unfortunate events. Right? All of us, no matter our size or scale or nature of operations, we collect and monitor logs. We're looking for either assistance with debugging, we're looking for any indicators of compromise or any anomalous or suspicious activities purely from a security perspective. We're sort of good at it, but we're always wondering about the effectiveness of these activities. And this is universal. Pretty much everybody I talk to, everybody either has, I've got a SIM in place, but I'm not sure if it's giving me the right output, or I need to have a SIM in place, but I don't know what I'm going to get out of it. So I want to ask why. Why are we so worried about whether our monitoring of logs is effective, whether we are doing the right thing, whether we are going about it the right way? So I would like to walk you through a small scenario. Okay. So here's scenario one. So this is an AWS CloudTrail log. It shows a failed login attempt. This was attempted via the AWS Web Console. The MFA was actually used. So if you look at the arrows, I don't know if you can see. Sorry, maybe not, but if you can see the arrows, they point to, so the first one shows the console login, there was an MFA failure, and it says that MFA was used, right? Let's look at a second scenario. So we have a machine learning based rule that was triggered over here. This was specifically for an unusual time for a user to log in. It was based on previous login patterns. So the tool actually learned the login pattern for the user, and the username, the source IP, and the timestamp influence the machine learning models over here, right? Don't worry about this. I'm just walking you through three scenarios. And here's a third one. So again, this is a machine learning based rule. It is triggered because the user signed in from an unusual location, right? Based on previous login patterns, based on where the user has logged in from previously, the username and the source IP was primarily the influencer for the machine learning model, right? So what is happening over here? These are three different alerts that you would typically see being sent out by your security monitoring team or your vendor, right? What do you do with these? What does your team do with this? They may typically be ignored by responders as typical user behavior. Now, why is that? Anybody can have a failed login. Fat fingers, I mistyped my password, mistyped my username, I'm just sleepy. Anybody could be traveling somewhere. So I may be working in a different time zone, so I logged in at an unusual time as compared to my normal login patterns. Or again, location also is dependent. Everybody is very used to work from home. There's a hybrid working model. We're trying to come out of it, but I could be in Spain and working from Spain, so there's a different time zone, and my machine learning model triggers that, right? So this could typically be ignored by a SOC as normal user behavior if it doesn't show up in another pattern, right? So it may genuinely be typical behavior, but is it really? How do you know? Is your SOC capable of identifying if this is genuine behavior or is it not? So what are we trying to do? So let's take a step back. How does this typically happen? Let's see how breaches happen. The most common way that we see, it starts off with social engineering. Somebody tries to build up a rapport with you, they'll strike up a conversation, they'll meet you on some sort of a public channel, maybe a Slack forum that you frequent, or an event like this possibly, and they'll try and get you into a comfort zone and send you an email. So I'm cheating a little over here. Phishing also categorizes as social engineering, but it deserves a category of its own. So they eventually send you an email. The email has something that you download or you click on, you go to a website, you enter your details, and bam, you're landed with a credential leak. This is typically where you will see those kind of alerts being thrown up. So MFA failed, so the username and password was correct, but the MFA failed, right? Because the person does not have the device that they use to generate the .p. Okay, or somebody signing in from another location, or somebody signing in at an unusual time. So you do have a successful login, but it's not a genuine login. So what are we trying to do over here? What we're trying to answer is your detection layer. It could be your in-house team, it could be your outsourced vendor, it could be your tool. Are they aware enough to identify and chain these sequence of events together? Do you even have visibility across all of these layers, right? I talk about that a little later. Do you have visibility to capture social engineering attempts? That's very difficult, right? So they have to be empowered. Your vendor typically is so many degrees of separation away from your business that they don't even know what quantifies as risk to your business. They may not be business aware. Your in-house team may not be risk aware. So how are you going to ensure that you have visibility across all of this? Right? Let's take it step by step. So the very first thing that I spoke about was social engineering. Is this something that you can log? Can you capture this activity? Can you monitor this activity? Typically, no. How are you going to monitor one of your employees going to an event or hanging out on a third-party forum and chatting with other people? There's no control that you have over there, right? But the behavior that follows social engineering, can you monitor that? Typically, you're going to see an email coming in, you're going to see some sort of data transfer happening, or some sort of digital communication happening, which you can try and fit into a pattern, right? So you can't monitor social engineering activity, but you'll be able to monitor behavior. Phishing. Can you monitor phishing? Can it be logged? Yes. Do you have an email gateway? If yes, great. If no, even if you're on the basic version of services like Google Workspace or Office 365, they give you some amount of visibility into what sort of emails are flowing into your environment. Are they? Do they have DKIM? Is there SPF? Is it DMARC ready? You'll get all of that information, so you can sort of at least flag certain kinds of emails that flow into your environment. How do people interact with those emails? Are they clicking on links? Are they just deleting those emails? Are they downloading attachments and doing something? So email is completely visible. If you have the right tools in place and you have the right approach to it, you can monitor email, both phishing activity and behavior post-phishing. The next step after phishing is going to be end user device compromise. So I'm either going to take them to a page, or I'm going to use a dropper on that machine and then try and capture keystrokes to basically get credentials. Is credential leak identifiable, monitorable? Kind of, yes. You sort of need a combination of internal logs and external visibility. So dark web, so if you're a public facing organization, you're typically going to land up on one of those raid forums or dark web forums where somebody's selling your data if you've been breached. Zomato's been breached, LinkedIn has been breached, PhonePe, whoever you can think of, right? It's pretty common. How do you control an employee who signed up to Zomato using your work email address? And probably they're using the same email address for the email, work email, and Zomato, right? So credential leak can be monitored. You probably need dark web monitoring or brand risk monitoring or something like that, but it can be. And once credential leak is monitored, what happens after that can also be monitored internally, right? What happens after that is privilege escalation. So fine, I've got credentials, I've got access to your internal systems. I'm going to try and maintain that access and escalate my privileges so that I can wander around and find what really matters, right? Can privilege escalation be logged and monitored? Any SIM, blindly pick up any SIM, they'll be able to do this very well. Everybody has a certain level of maturity around it. Your teams know what privilege escalation looks like. You can't be helped if you're using shared user accounts. So if EC2 user or Ubuntu or administrator is what your team of 50 people is using to log into systems, then you're in trouble. But you will know what that particular user is doing after they log in, when they log in, where are they logging in from. You'll probably have a PIM or a PAM in place which probably records the activity as well, right? So this is one possible journey that an attack can take. Somebody gets social engineered, they get phished, they leak their credentials, and the hackers into your environment. Now, is your SoC capable of detecting all of this? What is the impact of all of this going to be? Are they aware of what is going to happen if all of this happens in a sequence, right? So let's assume we are in the cloud. Since I showed you cloud logs, there's going to be a huge cloud bill to handle. That's a very that organizations face. I'm sure some of you must have come across organizations who got their cloud accounts breached, and suddenly somebody spun up Bitcoin mining instances and they did not find out before the end of the month when they were faced with a massive bill, right? If you're a public facing company and this gets out, you're going to lose reputation. There's going to be brand damage. There's going to be trust damage. Your vendors, your customers, your partners may hesitate to, further continue business with you. That can have an impact on direct revenue, and sometimes you may even shut shop. Take Capital One in the US, right? How do we piece together all of these puzzles, right? So I've sort of possibly shown you some of the things that you are faced with. So where does security monitoring come in? Okay, let's try and piece together the puzzle to see where we are leading into, right? I'm going to take an example of, actually, that's later. What are the pieces of the puzzle? Now, this is what pretty much all of us are familiar with as a layered approach to security. I've given a little bit of a twist over here. So you start off by monitoring your surface area, right? What constitutes your surface area? Your cloud environment, your VPN. A lot of you may have people working from home, working remotely. Your applications that are public facing, your technology stack, that is your surface area. That is what an attacker is going to focus on when they're trying to either maintain access or escalate their privileges, right? You have to monitor each of these layers. You cannot have a gap in between, because then you're going to miss components, right? What comes next? Communication. This is a very tricky bit, right? How many of you have the capability of monitoring what goes on inside your Slack channels or your Teams channels or your Hangouts, right? Not a lot of us. There's no logging over there. How do you know if somebody is actually trying to interact with your employees using an impersonated ID, right? So instant messaging is very tricky, and that's where you'll see a lot of breaches also being initiated. Email is fine. I think I've already spoken about emails. Emails, you can monitor, you can put a lot of controls. A lot of email service providers also come with controls. Document sharing is another tricky one. A lot of us still have file shares, which are sort of open to public. Some of us may also use S3 buckets as file shares, or corresponding storage mechanisms in other clouds. How do you monitor that? How do you monitor what is somebody putting up there? What is somebody downloading from there? Who is modifying data? You don't know that, right? So that's one big missing piece in your puzzle. So the first level is surface area. The second is communication. Let's start coming inside. Endpoints. I think we're all good with endpoints. You've got EDR, you've got state-of-the-art, futuristic, next-gen, legacy, EDR, XDR, MDR, whatever buzzwords, acronyms you want to use. EDR is very good, okay? A lot of EDR providers out there have mastered this particular domain. They can do behavioral analysis, they can do signature-based analysis, call it what you will. So environment access, device control, user behavior, all of that can be monitored really well. If you maintain or manage any kind of an environment where you have a lot of dependency on your end users, your endpoint has to be absolutely top-notch. So invest that money into a good tool which will help you gain that visibility, and it's not rocket science anymore at the endpoint level. Same goes for behavior. So user location, user criticality. It's a little trickier because everybody's spread out and people are working remotely. But you can still manage it effectively, and most of your tools will be able to tell you what happens over there. External. This is the fun bit. How do you know if you've already been breached? A lot of us do not have visibility over there, right? So how many of you monitor the dark web? How many of you monitor the dark web for data leaks or employee email compromises, or social media for that matter? I don't know if you're aware, but social media is a very powerful channel that attackers use to control command and control centers, or to transmit data in short bursts, right? So dark web monitoring, if you're a public facing organization, if you hold user data, or if you have some sort of a reputation to protect, then dark web monitoring is something that you should definitely consider, right? That's also a very important piece of the puzzle. Let's take a breach that I'm hoping that most of us are familiar with. What I have on screen over here is one of the possible journeys that the Uber attacker took to breach into Uber. You might have seen some of the data floating around, some of the screenshots from their dashboards. But what this does is it maps. I've actually put in a reference link, so when you get the slides, you can go through it if it's not visible over here. But this is basically the journey. An adversary social engineered a user into giving up their credentials. They got their credentials. 𝗏 was following best practices. 2FA was enabled. They actually did something which is now known as MFA fatigue. They kept bombarding the user with requests to approve MFA. So that's the second bit, the 2FA, MFA spamming. Eventually, the user got tired and either accidentally clicked on approve. So imagine you trying to log into your Gmail account from a new location and you get a message on your phone saying, is this you trying to log in? Yes, no. So this is what that was, right? They got MFA. They got approved access into the user's account. Lucky they were, the user turned out to be a privileged user. So the user had administrative access. So what happens next? Done? Okay. Okay, that was scary. Okay, so then they got into the VPN. Okay, now eventually they follow through the journey, but the point I'm trying to make over here is, do you have the capability to monitor events happening at each layer? Can you monitor VPN access? Yes. Can you monitor 2FA, failed 2FA logins? Yes, you can. Do you? That's a different question. Can you monitor internal scans, discovery of your environment, lateral movement, and things like that? The attacker eventually found a file share which had PowerShell scripts, and the PowerShell scripts had credentials. Using that credentials, the attacker managed to get into the PAM that was being used by Uber, and that's basically the keys to the kingdom, right? So let me run through this quickly, but how do you make sense out of this? What you typically need to focus on to get proper visibilities, how do you log? That's very important. How and what you log is very important. Otherwise, you're going to, like Rakesh mentioned before me, there's so much noise. There's so much noise out there, and it's not going away anytime soon. It's only going to increase exponentially. So you have to be absolutely sure that your logging and monitoring policies are capturing the right information. They are designed in such a way that they help you with threat hunting, right? You have to have visibility across your attack surface area. If you don't know what you have to protect or monitor, then you're playing a losing game, right? Your business applications are a very core component. I see a lot of organizations investing heavily into SIEM tools, but they don't really integrate their business applications because in-house applications sometimes do not even have logging capability. They have to go back to the dev team and ask them to build logging capabilities, right? Infrastructure, end user, and then what is more important is threat modeling and detection engineering. So once you have all of this together, what do you do with all of this? So that is where a threat model of your organization makes sense. Detection engineering, creating specific use cases that apply to you, even though you may have a very common industry, but you may have specific applications that you use differently, right? I'll skip this. Okay, this is basically mapping it to the NIST framework. But I sort of want to wrap up my, so typically after I speak all of this, this is the reaction I get. Everybody's confused. Like, right, what is the point you're trying to make? So the point I'm trying to make is, there's no magic pill. Okay, there's no state-of-the-art, futuristic, next-gen, space-age tool that you can implement which will help you with visibility. Okay, no matter what you have, your ability to detect and your ability to know what you want to protect is going to be the most important bit. In very simple terms, your inventory. Do you have your asset inventory? And by your asset inventory, I don't just mean your servers. I mean critical people. I mean information assets. Do you know your third parties, your vendors who you liaise with, right? That's one. The second thing is, the sooner you can detect, the quicker you can move to containment. Because in security, time is of the essence. I mean, that's fairly obvious, you know. A half an hour difference in detecting and blocking something and allowing something to happen can play havoc with your environment. So your ability to detect again comes into play over here. So see, I very commonly get people saying, oh, I do VA, I do PT. I have this EDR tool, you know, on all my servers, and we have state-of-the-art VPN and everything. But you don't know, you know, I mean, there's a very cliched saying in cybersecurity, there are only two types of organizations. One who know they've been breached and the other ones who don't know they've been breached, right? So if you rely on only your preventive controls or your detective controls, then you're going to be in for a tough time, right? And the most important bit, you need to empower your detection layer. There is a human element. I personally feel AI is a myth in threat detection. There's still a long way to go for AI to step in and help out with that. ML is there. Use ML, but don't get carried away by AI. AI does not have the contextual understanding of your business to be able to piece together the different pieces, right? That is where your detection layer is very important. Whether it is a vendor or whether it is in-house doesn't matter. Your detection layer needs to know your business risk. Have somebody intermediate who can translate it for them, but they need to know what your business is doing. What are the risks that you are worried about? Where do you have effective controls? Where do you have a lack of control? Budgetary reasons, time reasons, whatever, right? So they can focus more over there. Otherwise, you're just going to keep getting brute force attempts or login failures or account lockouts and things like that, right? And not listening to your detection layer is going to be very costly. And that's it. Thank you. That has to be the fastest presentation I ever did. Thank you. That's me, Bhowmik.